They threw us out with nothing. But what we found buried in our grandfather's land made powerful people come looking, and we almost didn't make it out alive. At 19, my sister and I thought losing everything was the end. No home, no money, no one left to turn to, just a rusted key and a piece of land everyone said was worthless. But the day we opened that hidden cave, everything changed. What we found wasn't just a shelter. It was a secret people would risk everything to take from us. Before we go further, tell me where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. $9. That was all my father paid each year to keep something hidden. I didn't understand it at first. Standing there on the cracked concrete driveway, watching two men in gray jackets carry the last of my things out of what used to be my home, on $9 felt like a joke. A number too small to matter in a world that had just taken everything from me. The sky above western Montana was a dull, colorless gray. Low clouds pressed down against the mountains like a lid. The air smelled like wet dirt and cold iron. It had rained earlier, just enough to turn the gravel into mud, just enough to make everything feel heavier. "Mr. Hayes," one of the men said, not unkindly, "we're done here." I nodded, but I didn't move. There wasn't anything left to move. My house, if you could still call it that, stood behind them, empty. Windows bare, door wide open. No curtains, no furniture, no sign that anyone had ever lived there. Just a hollow shell, already forgetting me. Coda stood beside me. He didn't bark, he didn't growl. He just watched. German shepherd, military trained. A scar along his right shoulder where shrapnel had grazed him 2 years ago. His ears were alert, his body still, but I could feel the tension in him. He knew something was wrong. He always knew. I reached down and rested a hand on his head. His fur was thick, warm despite the cold air. He leaned into my touch just slightly, just enough to remind me he was still there. "Yeah," I muttered. "We're done here." The men got into their truck and drove off without another word. The sound of the engine faded down the road, swallowed by the hills. Silence settled in. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. The kind that presses in on you, fills your ears until you can hear your own heartbeat. I stood there longer than I should have. Long enough for the cold to creep through my boots. Long enough for my fingers to go numb. Long enough for the memories to start pushing in. Sand. Heat. The sound of distant gunfire. A door slamming somewhere behind me snapped me back. I turned too fast. My chest tightened. My breath caught halfway in. Not here. Not now. Coda moved instantly. He stepped in front of me, pressing his body against my leg, grounding me. His eyes locked onto mine. Steady, calm, unshaken. I exhaled slowly. The world came back into focus. Montana. Not overseas. Not a war zone. Just a man who had lost his house. "Good boy," I said quietly. He didn't move until my breathing evened out. Then, and only then, did he step back. Everything I owned was sitting in the bed of my truck. A worn duffel bag, a few tools, a rolled-up sleeping bag, and a small cardboard box the bank had set aside, labeled in black marker, personal, when I hadn't opened it yet. Didn't see the point. But now there was nothing else left to do. I climbed into the truck, the seat cold beneath me, and pulled the box onto my lap. The cardboard was soft at the edges, like it had been handled too many times. Coda jumped up beside me without being told. He turned once, then settled, his body angled toward the open road. Always ready, always watching. I lifted the lid. Inside was what you'd expect from a life that had been stripped down to nothing. Old papers, a couple of photographs, a watch that hadn't worked in years, Things the bank didn't care about because they had no value. At the bottom, though, there was something different. An envelope, yellowed with age, edges curled. My name written across the front in a handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade. Caleb. What, my throat tightened. I didn't need to read the return address to know who it was from. My father. He'd been gone 10 years. Cancer. Took him slow. I hadn't been there at the end. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. For a long moment, I just stared at it. Coda shifted slightly beside me. His nose nudged my arm, gentle but insistent. Yeah, I said under my breath. I know. I opened it. Inside there wasn't a letter. Not at first. A small brass key slid into my palm. It was old, tarnished. The kind of key you don't see much anymore. Solid, simple, made to last. Taped to it was a folded piece of paper. I peeled it free and unfolded it carefully. A receipt. Evergreen Storage, Unit 19. Location, Iron Ridge, Montana. I frowned, scanning the lines. The date caught my eye first. 10 years ago, and a week before my father was admitted to the hospital for the last time. My grip tightened on the paper. Paid in full. Annual renewal fee. $9. I read it again. $9. Every year. For 10 years. My father had paid to keep something in that storage unit. Something important enough to hold on to, even when everything else was falling apart. But that wasn't what made my pulse start to pick up. It was the line written at the bottom, not printed. Written, in his handwriting. When you have nowhere left to go, go here. The words hit harder than they should have, because he was right. I had nowhere left. No house, no family, no backup plan. Just a truck that might not make it through winter and a dog who refused to leave me. Coda let out a low, quiet sound in his throat, like he understood. I looked down at him. You think he knew? I asked. Coda's ears flicked forward. He stared at the envelope, then back at me. Steady, certain, like the answer was obvious. Maybe it was. My father had been a quiet man, not the kind to talk about feelings or make big promises. But he planned, always planned. If he'd left something behind, it wasn't by accident. I leaned back in the seat, the key still in my hand. Iron Ridge. I'd never heard of it. Could be nothing. An empty unit. A pile of junk that meant something to him but nothing to me. Or something else. The kind of something you hold on to for 10 years. The kind of something you write a message about before you die. Coda stood up suddenly. He moved closer, his nose brushing the key, then the paper, then my hand. Then he looked toward the road, a single, clear direction. Forward. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. All right, I said. My voice sounded different, stronger, not fixed, not even close, but not completely broken either. I folded the receipt and slid it back into the envelope. The key stayed in my hand. Cold, solid, real, $9 a year, for something my father didn't want anyone to find. I turned the ignition. The engine coughed once, then came to life. The sound filled the silence. Coda sat down again, eyes forward, ready. I took one last look at the empty house behind me. Then I put the truck in gear. Gravel crunched under the tires as we pulled away. I didn't know what was waiting in Iron Ridge. I didn't know if it would change anything. But for the first time since the bank took everything, I had somewhere to go, and that was enough, for now. The road stretched out ahead of us, long and empty, cutting through miles of open land that looked like it had been forgotten by time. The mountains sat low on the horizon, their tops swallowed by clouds that never seemed to move. Everything felt still. Too still. I drove without turning on the radio. Didn't want noise. Didn't want voices. Just the hum of the engine and the sound of tires rolling over asphalt. Coda sat upright in the passenger seat, eyes forward, alert. He didn't sleep. He never really slept when we were moving. Every passing car, every flicker of movement along the roadside, he tracked it all, always watching, always ready. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other resting near him, not touching, just close enough. It helped. The sun dipped lower as the hours passed, turning the sky a dull orange that faded quickly into gray. The temperature dropped with it. Out here, when the light left, it didn't ease into night. It just disappeared. I didn't know exactly where Iron Ridge was. The map on my phone barely showed it. Just a small name pinned to a stretch of land surrounded by nothing. No major roads, no real towns nearby. Just mountains and empty space. Figures. I drove until the fuel light came on. A small gas station appeared like a mirage at the side of the road. 2 pumps, a flickering sign, and a building that looked older than the road itself. I pulled in, the truck rattling slightly as it idled. Coda didn't relax. His ears stayed up, his body tense. "Easy," I said. But I felt it too. That quiet kind of unease that settles in places where not much happens, and maybe hasn't in a long time. And I stepped out into the cold air. It hit sharp, cutting through my jacket. My breath came out in thin white clouds. The station door creaked when I pushed it open. A bell rang overhead. Inside, the place smelled like stale coffee and dust. Shelves lined the walls, half empty, stocked with things no one had bought in a while. Behind the counter, an older man sat on a stool reading a newspaper that looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. He looked up slowly. His eyes lingered on me, then shifted past me, to the window, to Coda. "You passin' through?" he asked. Something like that. My voice sounded rough. I hadn't spoken much all day. He nodded once, like that was enough explanation. I paid for gas. Picked up a couple cans of cheap food and a bottle of water. Nothing more. I didn't have the money for anything more. "Where are you headed?" he asked as he handed me my change. "Iron Ridge." The man paused. Just for a second. But I saw it. That flicker. "Not much out that way," he said carefully. "You got business there?" I hesitated. Didn't feel like explaining. "Family," I said instead. It wasn't exactly a lie. He studied me for a moment longer, then gave a small nod. "Well," he said, leaning back slightly, "roads get rough the closer you get. Watch for ice after dark." "I will." I turned to leave. "Hey," he added. I looked back. He jerked his chin toward the truck. "That your dog?" "Yeah." "Good one," he said. "Keep him close." I didn't ask what he meant. I just nodded and stepped back out into the cold. Coda watched me as I approached. The moment I opened the door, he shifted. I was making space, his eyes scanning the area behind me before settling again. I started the engine. The road ahead was darker now, the kind of dark that swallowed headlights whole. We drove. Miles passed. The road narrowed. The pavement cracked, then turned rough. Eventually it gave way to gravel. The truck bounced slightly with every dip and rise. No streetlights. No houses. No signs of life. Just trees. Tall, dark pines stretching up into the night sky, their tops swaying gently in a wind I couldn't hear inside the cab. That's when it hit me. Not a sound. A feeling. Like something wasn't right. My hands tightened on the wheel. I slowed the truck. Coda lifted his head slightly. his ears angled forward. He felt it too. A memory pushed its way into my mind. Desert. Night patrol. The same kind of silence, yet the kind that comes right before something happens. My breathing changed. Shorter, faster. Not here. Not now. I blinked hard, trying to push it back, but the feeling stayed. I pulled the truck off the road onto a small clearing. Gravel crunched beneath the tires as I stopped. The engine idled. Then I shut it off. Silence rushed in. Too loud. Too thick. My chest tightened. The air felt wrong. My heart started pounding harder, faster. Coda moved. Not panicked. Not sudden. Just steady. He turned toward me and pressed his head against my shoulder. Solid. Real here. I closed my eyes, focused on the weight of him, on the warmth, on the steady rhythm of his breathing. In, out, slowly. The noise in my head began to fade. The trees outside stopped looking like shadows. The darkness stopped closing in. And just a forest. Just a road. Just another night. I exhaled. Good boy, I whispered. He didn't move right away. He stayed there, holding me in place, making sure I was back. Only when my hands stopped shaking did he pull away. I leaned back in the seat, staring up through the windshield at the sky. Clouds had cleared just enough for a few stars to break through. Small. Distant. But there. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key. The brass caught what little light there was. $9 a year. For something my father thought was worth keeping hidden. For 10 years, I said quietly. Coda looked at me. Whatever's out there, I continued, my voice low, steady now. It better be worth it. Coda's tail gave a slow, single thump against the seat, like agreement, or maybe just understanding. Either way, it was enough. I started the engine again. The truck roared back to life, breaking the silence. We pulled back onto the road, further into the dark, further into whatever my father had left behind. And somewhere out there, past the trees, past the mountains, past the miles of empty land, Iron Ridge was waiting. We reached it just after sunrise, if you could call it that. Iron Ridge wasn't really a town, not the kind you'd find on a map with restaurants and traffic lights and people going about their day. It was more like a place the road forgot to leave behind, a handful of buildings clinging to the edge of the mountains like they were holding on out of habit. The morning light barely touched it. A thin layer of frost clung to everything. The rooftops, the fences, the dirt road that cut through the center of what passed for a main street. The mountains rose up behind it, tall and silent, casting long shadows that made the whole place feel colder than it should have been. I slowed the truck as we rolled in. Coda sat up straighter. His eyes moved constantly now. Storefronts, empty sidewalks, a rusted pickup parked crooked near a wooden building with a faded sign that read, General Store. No movement. No people. Just that same heavy quiet. I drove a little further until I saw it. Evergreen Storage. The sign was old, paint chipped and peeling, hanging crooked on two metal poles. Behind it, a row of storage units stretched along the base of a rocky hillside. Faded green doors, gravel lot, a small office building off to one side. It looked like it hadn't changed in decades. I pulled in slowly. The tires crunched over gravel, the sound too loud in the still air. Coda didn't wait for the engine to shut off. He was already alert, already scanning. Stay, I said. He obeyed, but his eyes stayed locked on the buildings. I stepped out. The cold hit harder here, sharper, like the mountains were holding onto it and refusing to let go. The office door had a sign taped to it. Open. I pushed it open. A bell rang overhead. Inside it was warmer, but not by much. A small space. Desk, filing cabinets, a heater in the corner that hummed but didn't seem to be doing much. Behind the desk sat an older man, maybe late 60s, with a thick gray beard and a pair of reading glasses low on his nose. He looked up slowly, took me in, then glanced past me toward the window, toward Coda. "Help you?" he asked. His voice was rough, but not unfriendly. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope. "I'm here for a unit," I said. "Number 19. His eyes shifted to the envelope, then back to me. "Name?" "Hayes. Caleb Hayes." Something changed in his expression. Not much, but enough. He leaned back slightly, studying me more closely now. "Hayes," he repeated. Then he nodded once. "Thought that might happen someday." My chest tightened slightly. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a key ring. Heavy, metal clinking softly as he set it on the desk. "Your father," he said, "was a quiet man, didn't talk much. But when he came in here 10 years ago, he was different." I didn't say anything. I just listened. "He paid cash," the man continued, "6 years up front. Well, and then he came back once more before he got sick. Paid the rest. Said he wouldn't be around to renew it." My grip tightened slightly. "He ever say what was in there?" I asked. The man shook his head. "No. Just said it wasn't for him anymore." He paused. "Said it was for you. When the time came." A strange feeling settled in my chest. Not quite hope. Not quite fear. Something in between. The man picked up the keys and stood slowly. His joints cracked slightly as he moved. "Come on," he said. "Let's see what he left you." I followed him outside. Coda was already on his feet. The moment he saw me, he moved closer, positioning himself just slightly ahead of me as we walked. The man noticed. "Good dog," he said quietly. "Yeah," I replied. "He is." We walked down the row of storage units. The numbers were painted in black and faded with time. 12, 13, 14. The closer we got, the more I could feel it. That same tension from the road, that sense that something was waiting. The man stopped. He unlocked a heavy padlock on the door and stepped back. "This one's yours now," he said. I nodded. He hesitated for a moment, then added, "If you need anything, I'll be in the office." Then he walked away. Just like that. Leaving me alone. With the door. With whatever was behind it. Coda stood beside me. Still. Focused. I reached out and grabbed the handle. Cold metal. I hesitated. Just for a second. Then I pulled. The door rolled up with a loud, grinding sound that echoed across the lot. Dust fell from the edges as it opened. Darkness inside. Cool air drifted out, carrying the faint scent of earth and something older, something stored away for too long. I stepped inside. Coda followed immediately. The light from outside spilled in just enough to reveal shapes. Boxes, stacked neatly along one wall. Tools, leaning against the other. Everything organized, everything deliberate. This wasn't junk. This wasn't random. This was planned. I moved further in, my boots echoing softly against the concrete floor. Coda's nose was already working, moving from one object to the next, sniffing, processing, understanding in a way I couldn't. I crouched down near the closest box, opened it. Inside were books. Geology, mining, maps, notes, all of it marked, studied, used. My father's handwriting was everywhere, careful, precise. I swallowed hard. Yeah, I muttered. This is him. I stood and moved deeper inside. At the back of the unit, something caught my eye. A wooden table. Old, worn, but sturdy. On top of it sat a rolled-up map. And beside it, a notebook. Leather-bound. Edges worn smooth from use. I picked it up. The cover creaked slightly as I opened it. First page. My father's handwriting. Clear. Steady. If you're reading this, then I was right. My breath caught. I flipped the page. This world has a way of taking everything from a man, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but what he planned for. My hand tightened on the edge of the notebook. What I left you isn't much, if you're looking at it the wrong way. I exhaled slowly. But if you follow the map, you'll understand. I looked up, at the table, at the rolled-up map. Coda let out a low sound. I turned. He was standing near the table now, staring at it, not moving, not blinking, waiting. I stepped forward, unrolled the map. It spread across the surface, edges curling slightly. Land, coordinates, a marked section of terrain deep in the mountains, 40 acres, a circle drawn near the center, and beside it, written in the same steady hand, the shelter. The word sent a chill through me. Not fear, something else. Recognition. Coda nudged my hand, then turned toward the open door, then back at me, like he was already ready to go. I stared down at the map again, at the lines, at the place my father had marked, a place he had paid to hide. For 10 years. For me, I said quietly. Coda's tail moved once, slow, certain. I rolled the map back up, picked up the notebook, took one last look around the unit. Everything here had been left on purpose. Everything had a reason. And whatever that reason was, it wasn't staying here. I stepped back outside. The cold air hit again, sharper now, but it didn't feel the same. Not empty, not hollow, different, like something had shifted. I locked the unit behind me. The key felt heavier in my hand now. Coda stood beside me, eyes already on the road. Forward, always forward. I looked out toward the mountains, toward the place marked on that map. All right, I said. My voice was steady now, stronger than it had been yesterday. Let's see what you left me. Coda moved first. I followed. The truck groaned as it climbed the narrow mountain road, tires slipping slightly on loose gravel. The map rested on the seat between us, edges weighed down by my hand every time the wind found its way through the cracked window. The deeper we went, the thinner the road became. Eventually, it stopped being a road at all. Just a path. Barely wide enough for the truck. No guardrails, no signs. Nothing but trees pressing in from both sides, their branches scraping against the sides of the vehicle like fingers dragging along metal. I slowed, then slowed more. Finally, I stopped. This is it, I muttered. According to the map, the marked land was still ahead, but not by road. I killed the engine. Silence settled again, heavy and absolute. Coda was already alert. He jumped down from the truck before I even opened my door, landing softly on the cold ground. His paws crunched lightly over frost and loose stone as he scanned the trees ahead. I grabbed the pack, the notebook, the map, slung everything over my shoulder. When I stepped away from the truck, it felt like crossing a line. Behind me, what little I had left. Ahead, whatever my father thought was worth hiding. Stay close, I said. Coda didn't need the reminder. We moved into the trees. The ground sloped upward almost immediately, forcing me to lean forward with each step. Rocks shifted beneath my boots. Dead branches snapped underfoot. The air smelled sharp. Pine, cold earth, something clean but unforgiving. Coda moved differently, not struggling, not slowing. He flowed through the terrain like he belonged to it. Every so often he would pause, glance back, make sure I was still there, then continue. Leading. Always leading. The climb wasn't easy. My lungs burned within minutes. My legs protested. The cold air cut into my chest, making each breath feel thinner than it should. But I kept going, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking wasn't something I could afford right now. After nearly an hour, the trees began to thin, the ground leveled out, and then it opened. The land stretched out in front of me, wide, empty, exposed. 40 acres. Maybe more. And it was exactly what it looked like on the map. Worthless. No grass worth grazing. No trees thick enough for lumber. Just rock. Broken, uneven ground, scattered with patches of dry dirt and low brush struggling to survive. Wind cut across it freely, carrying dust and cold in equal measure. I stood there, breathing hard, staring out over it. "This is it?" I said under my breath. "All that planning, all that time, all that money, for this?" A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "Yeah," I muttered. "Makes sense. Of course it would be nothing. Well, of course it would lead here. Just another empty promise left behind." I took a few steps forward, boots crunching over loose stone. Coda didn't follow. I turned. He stood near the edge of the clearing, body still, ears forward, watching something. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer, didn't move, just stared toward the far side of the land. Then, slowly, he started walking. Not toward me, away, toward a cluster of rock formations near the base of a steep incline. "Coda!" I called. He didn't stop. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. "All right," I muttered. "Fine." I followed. The wind picked up as we crossed the open ground, biting through my jacket, making my eyes water. Each step felt heavier now, slower. But Coda kept moving, focused, intent. When we reached the rocks, he didn't hesitate. He began to dig, move fast, purposeful. Loose dirt and small stones scattered behind him as his paws tore into the ground. "What are you doing?" I said, stepping closer. He didn't stop, didn't even look at me. He just kept digging. Something in the way he moved. Not random, not instinct alone. It was like he knew, like he recognized something I couldn't see. I crouched beside him, brushed away some of the loose dirt. At first, nothing, just more rock. Then, a sound, different, hollow. I froze. Coda paused too, his ears flicking slightly. I tapped the surface again. There it was. Not solid. Not like the rest. "Hold on," I said. I grabbed a piece of loose metal from my pack and started clearing more of the area. Dirt fell away. Stones shifted. The shape beneath began to take form. Flat, too even, on a surface that didn't belong here. My heart started to pick up. Not fast, not panicked, just aware. "This wasn't here by accident," I murmured. Coda let out a low, excited sound. Then, the ground shifted. A sharp crack split the air as part of the slope above us gave way. "Coda!" I shouted. Rocks tumbled down faster than I could react. Coda lunged, not away, toward me. He slammed into my side, knocking me off balance just as a cascade of loose stones crashed down where I had been kneeling. We hit the ground hard. Dust filled the air. Pebbles rained down around us. Then, silence. I coughed, pushing myself up slowly. Coda? He was there, right beside me. But something was wrong. He was limping. Hey, I said quickly, moving closer. Hey, easy. I checked his leg, a shallow cut along his front paw. Blood, but not deep, not serious. Still. You took that for me, I whispered. Coda looked up at me, calm, steady, like it was nothing, like it was his job. I swallowed hard. Yeah, I said quietly. I know. I tore a strip from my sleeve and wrapped his paw as best I could. He didn't flinch, didn't pull away, just watched me. When I finished, he stood, tested his weight, then turned, back toward the spot, the place we had uncovered. I followed his gaze. The rockfall had cleared more of the surface. Now it was unmistakable. A man-made slab, partially buried. Hidden. My breath slowed. Everything else faded. The wind, the cold, the doubt. All of it. Replaced by something else. Something sharper. Stronger. I stepped forward, placed my hand against the surface. Cold, solid, real. This is it, I said. Oh, not a guess, not hope, knowing. Coda stepped beside me, pressed his shoulder lightly against my leg, grounding me, keeping me here. I looked out across the land one more time. Still barren, still empty, still worthless. On the surface, I let out a slow breath, then looked back down at the hidden slab, at what lay beneath it. Guess you weren't wrong, I said softly. Coda's tail moved once, slow, certain, and for the first time since I had set foot on that land, I didn't feel like walking away. The wind still howled across the open ground behind me, cold and restless, but where I stood now, crouched over that buried slab, everything felt different, focused, like the world had narrowed to this one spot. I ran my hand across the surface again, brushing away more dirt. Oh, the stone was smoother than anything else around it, edges too clean to be natural. Someone had placed this here. Someone had sealed something beneath it. My father. I swallowed. Coda, I said quietly. He was already beside me, watching, always watching. Let's see what he left. I wedged my fingers into a narrow gap along the edge of the slab. It didn't move at first. Too heavy. Too settled into the earth after years of silence. I shifted my stance, planted my boots against the uneven ground, and pushed harder. Nothing. I exhaled slowly. All right, I muttered. Not that easy. I grabbed a metal tool from my pack, one of the ones from the storage unit. A pry bar, worn but strong. Of course he'd leave something like this. I worked the edge of it into the crack, pressed down. At first, nothing. Then, a faint shift, well, just enough to feel. I adjusted my grip and pushed again. The slab groaned, a low, grinding sound that seemed to echo through the ground itself. Coda stiffened slightly, alert, not afraid, just ready. Easy, I said under my breath, more for myself than for him. I pushed again, harder. The stone shifted another inch. Dirt crumbled away from the edges, falling into the darkness beneath. Cold air rushed up from below, Not the cold of wind, not the surface cold. Deeper. Still old. I paused, breathing heavier now. My hands trembled. Not from effort. From something else. I pushed one more time. The slab slid just enough to reveal an opening. A narrow gap at first, then wider. Enough to see into. Darkness. Thick. Complete. I leaned closer. The air rising from below carried a different scent. Not decay, not rot, stone, earth, and something preserved. Coda stepped forward beside me. He sniffed the opening, then glanced at me, waiting. "Yeah," I whispered. "I feel it too." I grabbed my flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing steps carved into the rock, leading down. My chest tightened. Not fear. Something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Anticipation. "This wasn't just a hole," I said quietly. "This was built." I widened the opening just enough to climb through. Then I stood there, at the edge, looking down. For a moment, everything in me hesitated. Every instinct, every memory. Dark spaces, enclosed areas. Too close, too quiet. My breathing shifted. The edges of my vision tightened. "Not now, not here." Coda moved. He pressed against my leg, firm, but grounding. I placed my hand on his neck, felt his warmth, his steady presence real. "Here." I exhaled slowly. "I'm good," I murmured. More to convince myself than anything else. Then I stepped down. The stone steps were solid beneath my boots, worn but not broken. Used, once, a long time ago. Coda followed right behind me. Close, always close. The light from above faded quickly as we descended. The flashlight beam became the only thing cutting through the dark. Step by step, down, deeper. The air grew still. The kind of stillness that didn't move, didn't shift. Like time had stopped down here, after what felt like too long. The stairs ended. The beam of my flashlight widened, and the space opened. I stopped. Completely. My breath caught. It wasn't a cave, not really. It was something else. A chamber carved into the mountain. Walls smoothed by tools, not nature. A small iron stove sat against one side, its pipe running upward through the rock. Shelves lined the walls, holding supplies sealed in containers, tools, water jugs, blankets neatly folded and stacked, everything organized, everything prepared. Like someone had expected to live here, or survive here. For a long time. I stepped forward slowly. The sound of my boots echoed softly. Coda moved beside me, his head low, sniffing the air. He wasn't tense, he wasn't unsure. If anything, he was calm, safer than he had been outside. I ran my hand along one of the shelves. Dust, but not thick. Not abandoned long enough to be forgotten. Just waiting. "For me," I whispered. The words didn't feel strange anymore. They felt right. As I moved deeper into the chamber, there was a table, stronger than the one in the storage unit, and on it, more pages, more notes, more of his handwriting. But I didn't reach for them yet. Not yet. I turned slowly, taking it all in. The walls, the supplies, the structure. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't a last resort. This was intention. This was planning. This was a man who knew something was coming, or believed it, and prepared anyway. Coda let out a low sound. I looked down. He was standing near the back wall now, staring at something, not barking, not warning, just focused. "What is it?" I asked. I stepped closer. The beam of the flashlight followed, and then I saw it. Another opening, smaller, narrower, hidden behind a section of rock that blended almost perfectly with the rest. Well, if you weren't looking for it, you'd miss it. I crouched down, ran my hand along the edge. Same feel, same unnatural smoothness. There was more. More than just this room. Coda looked at me, then back at the opening, then at me again. Waiting. Always waiting. I let out a slow breath. A small, almost disbelieving smile touched my lips. "You didn't just leave me a place to hide," I murmured. "You left me something bigger." Coda's tail moved once, slow, certain. I leaned back slightly, sitting on the cold stone floor. For the first time in, I didn't know how long. I didn't feel exposed. I didn't feel hunted. I didn't feel like I had nowhere to go. The walls didn't close in. The silence didn't press down. It held, steady, safe. I reached out and rested my hand against Coda's side, and he leaned into it without hesitation. We stayed like that for a while. Just breathing, just existing. No past, no noise, no weight pressing down on my chest. Just this place, this moment, this shelter. And for the first time in years, I understood what my father had been trying to give me. Not money, not land, not answers. A place to stand when everything else fell apart. A place to come back to. A place to survive. I looked around once more, at the walls, at the supplies, at the hidden opening beyond. Then I nodded slowly. "All right," I said, my voice steady, grounded. "We're not leaving." Coda didn't need to answer. He already knew. The cave held the quiet differently, not like the silence outside, the kind that pressed in and made your thoughts louder. This silence, it settled. It stayed in place. It didn't chase you. It gave you room. I hadn't felt that in years. I stood slowly, my legs stiff from the climb and the cold. The beam of the flashlight drifted back toward the table. The letters were still there. Waiting. I hesitated. For a long time, I had avoided anything that felt like the past. Memories didn't come soft. They didn't sit quietly and let you choose when to think about them. They came hard, loud, without warning. And once they were there, they didn't leave. But this felt different. I stepped forward. Coda followed, his movement calm, unhurried. He stayed close, just behind me, his presence steady like a hand on my back. I reached for the top letter. The paper was thick, old, but preserved. My father's handwriting covered the page, strong, deliberate, but like he knew exactly what he wanted to say. I sat down at the table, took a breath, then began to read. "If you found this place, then I was right about one thing. You wouldn't give up, even when everything told you to." I exhaled slowly. That sounded like him. Not soft, not sentimental, just certain. I didn't build this for comfort. I built it for when the world stops making sense. My fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the page. When you come back from things no one should see, no one will understand what you carry. Not fully. They'll try. Some will mean well, but they won't see what you see. The words hit harder than I expected. My jaw tightened. The cave felt smaller for a moment. The air thinner. I blinked, kept reading. This place isn't to hide you from the world. Oh, it's to give you a place where the noise can't reach you long enough to think again. A memory flashed. Heat. Dust. A sound too loud to forget. I shut my eyes. Just for a second. But it came anyway. The weight in my chest. The rush of air leaving my lungs. The feeling of the ground not being where it should be. My breathing changed. Short. Fast. Not here. Not now. Coda moved. Not sudden. Not urgent. He stepped closer and rested his head against my knee. Solid. Warm. Real. I focused on that. On the pressure. On the present. I inhaled slowly. Then again. And again. The memory faded. Not gone. But pushed back. Controlled. I opened my eyes. Coda was still there. Watching. Waiting. Yeah, I whispered. I'm here. I looked back down at the letter. Continued. I don't know what you'll lose, and I don't know how long it'll take, but I know this. You'll need a place where you don't have to explain anything. My throat tightened. The words felt like they were written yesterday. Not 10 years ago, like he had seen it all coming. Like he had known exactly how this would unfold. I couldn't stop what was coming for you, but I could make sure you had somewhere to stand when it was over. I leaned back slightly in the chair. The cave didn't feel like a discovery anymore. It felt like a message. A conversation that had been waiting years to finish. I reached for the next letter, then the next. Each one built on the last. Not instructions, not commands. Understanding. Quiet, steady understanding. He wrote about the land, about the mountains, about how isolation could break a man or give him space to rebuild. While he wrote about time, about patience, about letting the noise settle before trying to make sense of anything. And between the lines, he wrote about me, not directly, not in a way that called me out, but in the way he described what a man goes through after war, like he had seen it, like he had lived it, or watched someone close to him carry it. I didn't know which, maybe both. At the bottom of one page there was a final line, simple, short. If the world takes everything from you, this place will still be here. I stared at it for a long time, longer than I should have, because for the first time since I lost the house, since everything started falling apart, I didn't feel like I had nothing. I had this place, this space, this chance. Coda shifted slightly, lowering himself to the ground beside me, and his head rested near my boot. Relaxed. At ease. More at ease than I had seen him since we left. That told me everything I needed to know. Dogs didn't lie about places. They didn't pretend something was safe. They knew. I folded the letters carefully, set them back on the table. Not hidden, not put away. Just placed. Like they belonged. Because they did, I stood and walked slowly through the chamber again. Not searching, just looking. Seeing it differently now. The stove wasn't just a tool, it was warmth. The shelves weren't just storage, they were time. The walls weren't just stone, they were protection. I stopped near the entrance, looked back at the space, then down at Coda. He looked up at me. Calm, steady, present. You were right, I said quietly. He didn't move. Didn't need to. You always are. His tail tapped once against the stone, soft, certain. I leaned back against the wall, letting the cold surface press against my shoulders, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I didn't feel like I was holding everything together by force. I didn't feel like I had to be ready for something at every second. I didn't feel like the next moment was going to take something else from me. I just existed. Breathing. Thinking. Quiet, the kind of quiet I hadn't trusted in years. Until now. But as the stillness settled deeper, as the weight in my chest eased, something else began to surface. Not fear, not pain. Something sharper, something forward. A question. If this place was what my father left me to survive, then what was behind that second opening? I turned slowly. The narrow passage at the back of the chamber sat in shadow, unexplored, unanswered. Coda lifted his head. He followed my gaze, then stood, not tense, not uncertain, just ready. Like before. Like always. I exhaled slowly, a small shift in my chest. Not anxiety, not pressure, curiosity. All right, I said quietly, my voice steady, grounded. Let's see what else he left behind. Coda moved first, and this time, I didn't hesitate to follow. The narrow passage swallowed the light almost immediately. The beam from my flashlight narrowed, bouncing off uneven stone walls that closed in tighter than the chamber behind us. The air shifted as we stepped deeper, cooler, heavier, carrying a faint metallic scent I couldn't place at first. Coda moved ahead of me, slower now, more deliberate, each step placed carefully, went his body low, ears forward, reading the space in a way I couldn't. The ground dipped slightly, not steep, but enough that I had to watch my footing. This wasn't just extra space, I murmured. The walls here weren't as smooth, less finished, like this part had been discovered, not built. We moved another 20 feet, then 30. The passage widened just enough for me to straighten fully. And then, it opened. Not like the chamber before, not shaped by hands. This space felt different, natural, raw. The ceiling rose higher, jagged in places, catching the light in uneven fragments. The ground spread out, rough and broken, scattered with small rock formations that looked like they had been pushed upward over time. I stopped. My breath slowed. Something about this place. It wasn't just hidden, it was untouched. But Coda stepped forward, nose low, sniffing along the ground. Then, he paused, completely still. Coda? He didn't respond, didn't move. His focus locked onto a section of exposed rock along the far wall. I stepped closer. The flashlight beam followed. At first, it looked like nothing, just stone. Then the light shifted, caught something, a faint shimmer. I frowned, moved the light again. There, not reflection, not moisture. Something embedded in the rock itself. I crouched down, ran my fingers along the surface. Cold, rough, but different from the rest. The texture wasn't uniform. There were streaks, veins, running through the stone. Wait, I whispered. I grabbed the small tool from my pack again, tapped lightly against the surface. The sound echoed sharper than before, not hollow, not solid, dense, usual. Coda let out a low sound, not a warning, something closer to alert curiosity. I chipped away a small piece of the outer layer, just enough to expose what lay beneath. The fragment broke loose, fell into my hand. I held it up to the light, and for a moment, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It wasn't gold, not silver, not anything obvious, but it had a sheen to it. Subtle, stronger than ordinary stone. I turned it slightly. The light caught it again. Clean, consistent, not random. My pulse picked up. Not panic, not fear. Recognition. From somewhere. Some memory buried deeper than the others. Lithium, I said quietly. The word felt strange in my mouth, like it didn't belong here. But it did. I had seen something like this before. In briefings, in reports, places people fought over, or places companies paid millions to access. I looked back at the wall, at the veins running through the rock. They weren't small. They stretched, farther than the light could reach. My breathing changed. Slower. Heavier, not from fear, from realization. This isn't just a cave, I murmured. Coda shifted closer to me, his body brushing against my side. Grounding. Always grounding. I swallowed. This is a deposit. The word echoed softly in the chamber. Deposit. Value. Everything that land didn't look like from above was here. Hidden. Buried. Protected. My father hadn't left me nothing. He hadn't left me survival. He had left me a future. I sat back slowly on the rough ground, the piece of rock still in my hand. My mind tried to catch up, to process, to understand the scale of what I was seeing. 40 acres of worthless land that no one wanted, that no one would look twice at, because everything valuable was hidden, exactly where no one would think to look. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. A quiet, almost disbelieving laugh followed. Of course, I said. Of course he would do it this way. Of course he would hide it where no one else would see. Not to sell, not to show, but to protect. Coda nudged my hand. I looked down. He was watching me, not excited, not confused. Just present. Like none of this changed what mattered to him. You knew something was here, didn't you? I asked softly. His tail moved once. Slow. Certain. I shook my head slightly. Yeah, I said. You always do. I stood again, turning slowly in place. The chamber stretched further than I could see. More veins. More rock. More of whatever this was. Enough to matter. More than enough. And suddenly, the quiet didn't feel as peaceful. It felt fragile. Exposed. Because if I could find this, someone else could too. The thought settled in, sharp and immediate. Not fear, awareness. I looked back toward the passage, toward the chamber, toward the entrance above. Everything felt closer now, more connected, more vulnerable. My grip tightened slightly on the piece of stone. This changes things, I said quietly. Coda's ears flicked. He turned his head slightly, listening. I froze. What is it? I asked. He didn't answer, but his body shifted. Subtle, alert. He moved toward the passage, then stopped. Looked back at me, waiting. A faint sound reached me then. Distant, barely there, but enough, not natural, not wind, but not shifting stone. Something else. My chest tightened. Not panic, preparation. I stepped toward him, lowered the light slightly. The cave felt different now. Not just a place to hide, not just a place to think. A place worth finding, a place worth taking. I exhaled slowly. "All right," I murmured, my voice steady, controlled. "Let's move." Coda didn't wait. He turned, led the way back toward the chamber. And this time, the silence behind us didn't feel empty. It felt like something was listening. We moved faster on the way back. Not running, not panicked, just aware. Every step echoed louder than before. Every shift of loose stone felt sharper, like it carried farther than it should. The cave that had felt safe minutes ago now felt exposed, like a place that could be discovered. Coda stayed ahead of me, his movements tighter now, more controlled. His ears flicked constantly, catching sounds I couldn't fully hear yet. We reached the main chamber. I grabbed the letters, the map, shoved them into my pack. "Move," I said quietly. Coda didn't hesitate. We climbed the stone steps quickly, the light from above growing stronger with each step. My heartbeat stayed steady, but heavy, focused, not fear, preparation. We reached the opening. Cold air rushed in again, different this time, carrying something with it. I stopped just below the edge. Coda froze. His body stiffened, low, alert. He let out a faint growl, barely audible. "Yeah," I whispered. "I hear it." Engines, distant, but getting closer. I climbed the last step slowly, carefully, raised my head just enough to see over the edge. Yet the land stretched out the same as before, empty, wind cutting across the rock and dirt. But now, there were tire tracks, fresh, cutting across the open ground. My chest tightened. "Didn't take long," I muttered. Coda moved beside me, his body pressed low to the ground. I scanned the horizon. There, 2 trucks, dark-colored, moving slowly across the land, following the uneven terrain like they knew exactly where they were going. Not lost, not exploring, tracking. My grip tightened on the edge of the stone. "How?" I said under my breath. No answer. But I didn't need one. People like this didn't guess. They didn't wander. They found. And once they found something, they didn't leave. Coda shifted slightly. His eyes locked onto the trucks, then flicked toward me, waiting. "Back," I said quietly. We dropped down into the opening again. I pulled the slab just enough to narrow the gap. Not closed, not fully hidden, but less obvious, less visible. The engines grew louder, closer. I crouched just beneath the edge, listening. Every sense sharpened, every muscle ready. The trucks stopped. Doors opened. Boots hit the ground. Voices. Low. Confident. Not worried. Not uncertain. They weren't guessing. They were confirming. Coda stayed still beside me. Not a sound. Not a breath out of place. I leaned slightly, just enough to catch the voices. Survey markers were right. Told you this land wasn't random. Old man must have known something. My jaw tightened. Old man. My father. They had been watching, maybe for years, waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone to lead them here. Me. A slow and controlled breath left my lungs. "Should have known," I murmured. Coda's head tilted slightly. He stayed locked on me, grounding, keeping me present. Above us, boots moved across the rock. Closer, too close. A shadow passed over the opening, I froze. Didn't breathe. Didn't move. The footsteps paused, right above us. Silence. Then, a voice. "Nothing here," the man said. "Just rock." Another voice responded. "Keep looking." The footsteps moved again. Away. Slowly. Carefully. I stayed still. Counted seconds. 10. 20. 30. Only when the sound of boots faded further out did I let my shoulders ease slightly. Coda exhaled softly. Barely audible. But I felt it. We waited longer. Then I carefully shifted the slab just enough to see again. The men were spread out now, moving across the land, scanning, checking, methodical, professional. One of them knelt near the spot where Coda had dug earlier. My chest tightened. He brushed away dirt, studied the surface. "Something's here," he called out. The others moved toward him, faster now, more focused. I pulled back immediately, closed the gap tighter. "They're not leaving," I whispered. Coda's ears flicked. He moved closer, pressed against my leg. Solid, steady. I closed my eyes for a second. Just one. Let the situation settle. Let the instinct take over. Not panic. Never panic. Think. "They don't know about the entrance," I said quietly. "Not yet." Coda watched me, waiting. "They know something's here," I continued. "But not what. Not where." I looked toward the deeper passage, toward the chamber, toward what lay beneath, the deposit. Well, the reason they were here. "They can't find it," I said. Not hope. Decision. Coda's tail moved once, slow, certain. Above us, the voices grew sharper, closer again, more urgent. "They're getting warmer," I murmured. My hand tightened around the strap of my pack. Everything had changed. This wasn't just a place to survive anymore. This was something people would come for. Something they would take. Something they would fight over. And I was standing right on top of it. I exhaled slowly. The weight in my chest settled into something else. Not fear. Resolve. "They're not taking this," I said, my voice low, steady, final. Coda shifted beside me. Closer. Ready. Above us, boots moved again. Closer. Then, a sharp sound. Metal against stone. The slab trembled slightly. Dust fell from the edges. "They're testing the ground," I whispered. Coda's body tensed. A low growl built in his chest. Controlled. Held. I placed a hand on his neck. "Not yet," I said. He stilled immediately. Trust. Absolute. Another strike. Closer. More direct. They were right above us now. My breathing slowed. Everything narrowed. Every sound. Every movement. Every second. "This is it," I murmured. Not fear. Clarity. The kind that comes when there's no more room for doubt. No more room for hesitation. Only action. Only choice. I looked at Coda. He met my gaze. No fear. No uncertainty. Just readiness. I nodded once. Slow. "Stay with me," I said. He didn't need to answer. He already had. Above us, another strike. And this time, the stone shifted. A thin line of light cut through the gap above us. A dust fell in slow streams, catching in the beam like drifting ash. Coda's body went rigid beside me. Not fear. Readiness. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Above us, a voice. Closer now. "Hold on. There's something here." The metal struck again. The slab groaned. Another inch. More light. More air. They were opening it. My mind moved fast. Not scattered. Not panicked. Sharp. Focused. Too many years in places where hesitation cost you everything. I leaned closer to Coda. Back, I whispered. He didn't question it. He shifted immediately, moving silently toward the steps leading deeper into the chamber. I followed, slow, controlled, each step placed with care. Above us, the voices grew louder. Get a better angle. Careful. It's hollow underneath. Hollow. They knew now, not everything, but enough. Once we reached the bottom of the stairs, I looked back once. The gap above widened, shadows moved across it. Silhouettes, boots, hands. They were right there. Coda let out the faintest growl. I placed my hand on his neck. Not yet, I murmured again. He stilled instantly. I turned, looked toward the deeper passage, the natural chamber, the deposit. Everything this had become. Everything this was about to cost. My chest tightened, not from fear, from the weight of the decision settling in. I could walk away, right now, take what I could carry, leave, disappear. They would take the land, the cave, whatever was under it. And maybe I'd survive. But something in me resisted that thought. Hard. Like a line I couldn't cross. Not after everything. Not after what my father built. But not after what Coda had already done to get us here. I exhaled slowly. No, I said under my breath. The word came out quiet, but solid. I wasn't leaving. Above us. The slab scraped again. A sharp crack echoed as it shifted further open. Light poured down the steps now. Boots hit stone. They're coming in, I said. Coda moved closer, pressed against me. Ready. I scanned the chamber quickly. Supplies, tools, the narrow passage behind us. A single way deeper. A single way out. Not good odds, but not impossible. My eyes landed on the stove, the pipe, the vent leading upward through the rock. A thought flickered. Not a plan. Not yet, but something. Above. A shadow dropped down onto the steps. A man. Heavy boots, dark jacket, flashlight cutting through the space. He paused halfway down, scanning. This is it, he called out. More voices above. Movement. They built something down here. Of course they saw it. Of course they would. I stepped forward slightly, positioned myself between the man and the deeper passage. Coda stayed tight at my side. Silent. Still. The man took another step down, then another. His light hit me. He froze. We locked eyes. Surprise flickered across his face. Then something else. Recognition. Not of me. Of what I was. An obstacle. Well, he said slowly. That saves us some trouble. More footsteps above. Another man dropped down behind him. Then another, 3. Maybe more coming. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there. Coda shifted slightly. Not forward. Not back. Balanced. Ready. The first man glanced at Coda. His expression changed slightly. Caution. Oh, easy, he said, though his tone wasn't for me. It was for himself. You're on private land, he continued, looking back at me. I let out a slow breath. Is that so? He nodded. Company property. Redstone Minerals. There it was, a name, a claim, a lie. Funny, I said. Didn't see your name on the deed. His jaw tightened. We can do this the easy way, he said. You walk away. We forget we saw you. Behind him, another man shifted, impatient, watching, waiting. I glanced past them. More shadows at the top of the stairs. More coming. Not a small operation. Not random. Prepared. Of course they were. I looked back at him. And if I don't? A pause, then he gave a small, humorless smile. Then this gets complicated. Coda's growl came back. Low, controlled. I felt it more than heard it. The man noticed that his hand moved slightly. Not reaching, but close. Ready. Everything slowed. The cave, the air, the moment. Every detail sharpened, every movement mattered. I lowered my voice. "You don't know what's down here," I said. He tilted his head slightly. "Enough to know it's valuable." "Enough to destroy it?" I asked. That gave him pause. Just a fraction. But it was there. Behind him, one of the men shifted again. "Boss, we don't need to talk." "Quiet," the first man snapped. His eyes stayed on me, measuring, calculating. Coda pressed closer. I felt his weight, his presence, steady, unshaken. I exhaled slowly. "This land's not for sale," I said. Simple, clear, final. The man studied me for a long moment. Then he shook his head slightly. "They all say that at first." He took one more step down. Closer now. Oh, too close. "This isn't about what you want," he continued. "It's about what's going to happen." I didn't move. Didn't back down. Didn't break eye contact. "No," I said quietly. "It's not." The tension snapped tight, invisible, but real. Coda's body tensed fully now, every muscle ready, every instinct engaged. The man's hand shifted again, closer, not drawn, but close enough. And in that moment, I knew there wasn't going to be a clean way out of this. Not anymore. The line had been crossed. The choice had been made. And whatever happened next, it would decide everything. I leaned slightly toward Coda. Barely a movement. But enough. "Stay with me," I whispered. His response was immediate. Silent. Absolute. Above us, more footsteps. More shadows. Closing in. And for the first time since I stepped onto that land, I understood exactly what my father had left me. Not just a place to survive, a place worth fighting for. The words settled in my chest like something solid. Not anger, not fear. Something steadier. Purpose. The man in front of me took another step down, testing the space like he already owned it. His boots echoed against the stone, loud in the quiet chamber. "You don't want this to get ugly," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. Like he'd had this conversation before. Like it usually ended the same way. I didn't answer. Not right away. Because something else was pulling at my attention. Not the men. Not the tension. The table. The letters. The notebook. My father's voice. Quiet but persistent, echoing in my mind. Not instructions, understanding. Not preparation. I shifted slightly. Not enough to draw attention. Just enough to angle my body toward the table behind me. Coda stayed pressed against my side. Still. Watching. Always watching. The man noticed the movement. His eyes flicked past me. Toward the table. Toward the pages. "What's that?" he asked. I didn't answer. But I saw it then. The change. Not in him. In the moment. This wasn't just about what was under the ground. It was about what my father had known. What he had recorded. What he had left behind. I took a slow breath. then another, and stepped back. Just one step. The man tensed. "Coda," I said quietly. The dog didn't move, didn't need to. He understood. I reached behind me, picked up the notebook. The leather creaked softly in my hand. The man's eyes narrowed. "Oh, you're going to want to put that down," he said. I flipped it open. Not randomly. I knew where to look. The last pages. The ones I hadn't fully read. The ones that felt different, detailed, precise. My eyes scanned the writing quickly. Coordinates, dates, observations, water sources, plant life, animal movement. Everything documented. Everything tracked. For years. My heart beat slower now. Stronger. "This land isn't empty," I said. The man's expression didn't change. Never said it was. "It's protected." That made him pause just slightly, but enough. "Protected?" he repeated. I nodded, tapped the page. "Endangered species. Water systems feeding into state-protected land. You disturb this." I looked up at him. "You don't just dig. You answer to the state. Federal, too." Silence filled the space. That's not empty, heavy. The men behind him shifted, uncertain now. The first crack in their confidence. The man in front of me didn't move, but I saw it in his eyes. Calculation. Reassessment. "You expect me to believe that?" he asked. I held his gaze. "Don't believe me," I said. "Verify it." I lifted the notebook slightly. "This isn't guesswork, this is data, years of it." Coda shifted beside me. Not aggressive, but present. A reminder. The man glanced at the notebook again, then back at me. "You're stalling," one of the men behind him said. "Am I?" I replied. The man in front of me raised a hand slightly, silencing the others. His eyes stayed locked on mine. "What are you offering?" he asked. There it was. The shift, from force to negotiation. I exhaled slowly. "Nothing," I said. That surprised him. "Most nothing." "This land stays the way it is," I continued. "You walk away." A faint smile touched his lips, not amused, interested. "You think you can stop us with a notebook?" I didn't smile, didn't react. "Not me," I said. I tapped the page again. The law. Silence again. Longer this time. The kind that stretches. The kind that makes people think. The man's jaw tightened slightly. He looked past me, at the cave, at the structure, at the hidden depth of what lay beneath. Then back at me. "This isn't over," he said quietly. I nodded. "I know." He held my gaze for another moment, then turned. "Let's go," he said. The men behind him hesitated. One of them stepped forward slightly. "But now." The word cut sharp, final. They moved, one by one, climbing back up the steps. Their boots echoed again, fading. Slower this time, reluctant, but leaving. The last man paused at the top, looked back. His eyes lingered on me, on Coda. Then he disappeared. Silence returned. Real silence. Not tension. Not waiting. Stillness. I stood there for a long moment. Didn't move. Didn't breathe differently, just listened. When I was sure they were gone, I lowered the notebook. My hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, from release. Coda moved first. He stepped in front of me, pressed against my leg. Solid. Steady. You held it together, I whispered. More to myself than him, but he understood anyway. His tail tapped once against the stone. I exhaled slowly. The weight in my chest shifted. Not gone, but different. I looked down at the notebook again, at the pages. Saw at the years my father had spent documenting everything. Not for himself, for this moment, for this fight. He didn't just leave me a place, I said quietly. Coda looked up at me. He left me a way to protect it. The words settled in, clear, certain. Outside, the wind moved across the land again. Cold, relentless, but it didn't feel the same. Not anymore, because now I understood what I was standing on, what I was standing for. I closed the notebook carefully, held it for a moment longer, then placed it back on the table. Not hidden, not protected, just where it belonged. Because it wasn't just a record, it was a weapon, and I was going to use it. The cave didn't feel the same after they left. It wasn't just shelter anymore. It was a line, and I had just stepped across it. I packed what I needed quickly. The notebook, the letters, the map. Everything my father had left behind that mattered. Coda stayed near the entrance, watching, listening. His ears moved with every sound outside, catching things long before I could. They'll be back, I said. Not a guess, a certainty. Coda glanced at me, then back toward the opening. Ready. Always ready. I moved up the steps carefully, pushing the slab just enough to look out. The land was empty again. No trucks, no movement. Just wind dragging across rock and dust. But the tracks were still there. Fresh. Clear. A reminder. They won't give up that easy, I muttered. I stepped out into the cold air. Coda followed immediately. The sky had shifted, gray clouds pulling in over the mountains, lowering the light, making everything feel tighter, closer. Storm coming, or something like it. I looked out across the land one more time, then turned back toward the trees. We're not waiting for them here, I said. Coda didn't hesitate. We moved, back across the open ground, back into the trees. But this time, we weren't running. We were choosing where the fight would happen. Iron Ridge looked different the second time. Not quieter, not emptier, just smaller. Like I could see through it now. The general store, the old gas pump, the worn-down buildings. All of it felt like a front, like the real things that mattered were hidden just beyond it, just like the cave. I parked near the storage office again. Coda stayed close as we stepped out. This time, people were around. A few. Watching. Not openly, but enough. News traveled fast in places like this. Yes, and strangers didn't stay strangers long. I pushed open the office door. The same bell rang. The same man looked up, but his expression changed the moment he saw me. You found it, he said. Not a question. I nodded. I need a lawyer. That caught him off guard. He leaned back slightly. Something wrong? I set the notebook on the desk, not fully open, just enough. Depends, I said. You know anyone who deals with land disputes? He studied me for a moment, then the notebook, then me again. Rachel Dunn, he said. She's local, handles most of the property issues around here. Where? He gave me an address. Small office, edge of town. Tell her I sent you, he added. I nodded once. Thanks. I picked up the notebook, turned to leave. Son, he called out. I paused, looked back. If your father left you something, he said slowly, he didn't do it halfway. I held his gaze for a second, then nodded again. I'm starting to see that. Rachel Dunn's office sat at the edge of Iron Ridge, a small building with a wooden porch and a single sign out front. No flash, no decoration. Just practical. Like everything else in this town. I knocked once, then opened the door. She looked up from her desk immediately. Mid-30s, maybe early 40s. Sharp eyes. Focused. She didn't waste time. Can I help you? I hope so, I said. I stepped in, closed the door behind me. Coda stayed at my side. She noticed him, then me, then the notebook in my hand. What's this about? She asked. I walked over, set the notebook on her desk, opened it, flipped to the pages, coordinates, data, and everything my father had recorded. Her expression changed as she read, from curiosity to interest to something sharper. You understand what this is? She asked. I do. She leaned back slowly, studied me. And you're saying this is on your land? I'm saying it's mine, I replied. A pause, then, who else knows? People who want it. That was enough. She closed the notebook carefully. Then we don't have much time. Good. No hesitation. No doubt. Just action. What do we do, Madame? I asked. She stood, moved toward a cabinet, pulled out files. First, we secure the claim. Then we notify the state. Environmental protections will stall any attempt to extract anything from that land. And Redstone? Her jaw tightened slightly. They'll push, she said, hard. But if this holds, she tapped the notebook. But they can't touch it. Coda shifted beside me, calm, but alert. I felt it too. The shift. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was strategy. This was a fight that wouldn't be won in a single moment. But over time, over pressure, over persistence. Rachel looked at me again. You ready for that? She asked. I thought about the cave, the land, my father's words, Coda, everything that had led to this. Then I nodded. I am. That night, we didn't go back to the cave. We stayed just outside town, in the truck, same as before. But it didn't feel the same. The air was colder, the wind louder. But inside, something had changed. I wasn't drifting anymore. I wasn't reacting. I was moving forward. Coda rested beside me, his head low but his ears too still alert. He didn't sleep fully. Not yet. Not until it was safe. I looked out through the windshield. The mountains stood in the distance, dark, silent, waiting. They're going to come back, I said quietly. Coda didn't move. They won't stop. His tail tapped once, slow, certain. I nodded slightly. Neither will we. The words felt right, not forced, not borrowed, mine. I leaned back in the seat, closed my eyes for a moment, not to escape, just to think, to breathe, to hold the line. Because tomorrow, the real fight would start. And this time, I wasn't alone. Morning came slow over Iron Ridge. Gray light spilled across the mountains, soft at first, then sharper as the sun pushed through the clouds. Frost clung to the edges of everything, the truck, the ground, Even the air itself felt frozen in place, but something inside me wasn't. So for the first time in a long time, I woke up without that immediate weight pressing down on my chest. No rush of noise. No sudden pull back into things I couldn't control. Just quiet. Real quiet. Coda lifted his head the moment I moved. He didn't jump, didn't startle. He just looked at me. Checking, always checking. "I'm good," I said. My voice was steady. He held my gaze for a second longer, then relaxed. Just enough. That was how I knew it was real. Not forced, not temporary. Something had shifted. The next few days moved fast, faster than anything had in a long time. Rachel worked like someone who didn't waste time. Paperwork, filings, calls, meetings, everything moving forward step by step. The notebook became more than just pages. It became proof, evidence, leverage, the kind that didn't shout, but held its ground. Word spread. Quiet at first, then louder. People in Iron Ridge started paying attention. Not to me. To the land. To what it meant. To what would happen if it was taken. Some came by. Didn't say much. Just stood. Looked. Nodded. Like they understood something without needing it explained. Others kept their distance. Watched. Waited. That was fine. This wasn't about everyone. Just enough. Redstone came back. Not loud. Not aggressive. Not like before. This time, they came careful. Lawyers, documents, offers, numbers written in ways that tried to look bigger than they were. Rachel didn't even hesitate. No. Every time. Clear. Firm. Final. "They're testing the edges," she told me. "Seeing where you'll bend." "I won't," I said. She studied me for a second, and then nodded. "I know." We went back to the land together. Not just me and Coda. Rachel came too. So did a man from the state. Environmental survey. Official. Measured. Quiet. The kind of presence that changed how people acted. We walked the ground slowly, across the same rock, the same wind, the same empty stretch that didn't look like anything worth fighting for, until you knew what was under it. Coda stayed close. His paw had healed. Not perfect, but strong. He moved without hesitation, without doubt. Like this place belonged to him too. Maybe it did. We reached the entrance. The slab still sat where we had left it, unmoved, unnoticed. For now. I looked at it, then at Rachel. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded. We opened it. Carefully, deliberately. This time, not hiding, not protecting, revealing. While the state official stepped down first, then Rachel. I followed. Coda last, always watching behind us. Inside, the cave held steady, unchanged. But it felt different. Not just mine anymore. Recognized. Seen. The official moved through the space slowly. Not rushed. Not impressed. Just thorough. He examined the walls, the water, the structure, then the deeper passage. When we reached the deposit, he stopped. Really stopped. For the first time. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's significant." Rachel didn't smile. Didn't react. Just nodded. "What about the environmental impact?" she asked. He looked around again, took in the details, then nodded once. "It's enough." Enough. That was all we needed. Weeks passed, then months. The fight didn't explode. It settled, like pressure building underground. Some paperwork turned into hearings. Hearings turned into decisions. Redstone pushed, but not the same way. Careful now, watching the lines, staying just inside them, because they had to, because the notebook held, because the land wasn't empty, because it couldn't be taken without consequence. And in the end, that was enough. I stood at the edge of the land again. The wind moved across it like always. Cold, unforgiving, but familiar now. Coda stood beside me, stronger, steady. He looked out across the ground, then up at me. Same look, same certainty. I nodded slightly. Yeah, I said. We're staying. The cave had changed, not in structure, in purpose. The stove worked, the shelves were stocked, the walls held. But it wasn't just a place to hide anymore. It was a home, not built in a day, not handed over. Earned, understood, held. I stepped down into it. Coda followed. The air settled around us. Warm, still, safe. I placed the notebook back on the table, exactly where it had been. Not hidden, not protected, just present. Because it wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was a legacy. A line that had been drawn long before I ever stepped foot here. And now, I was the one holding it. Coda moved to his place near the wall, lowered himself down, relaxed, fully, for the first time since we had arrived. I sat across from him, let the silence settle, not heavy, not empty, complete. I thought about everything that had happened, the road, the loss, the cold nights, the moment I almost walked away, and the moment I didn't. My father hadn't left me money. He hadn't left me answers. He hadn't left me anything easy. Well, he left me this. A place worth finding. A place worth protecting. A place worth becoming something again. I leaned back slightly, closed my eyes. Not to escape, just to feel it. The quiet, the stillness, the absence of everything that used to chase me. And when I opened them again, Coda was still there, watching, present, certain. I let out a slow breath. A small smile touched my face. He didn't leave me nothing, I said quietly. Coda's tail moved once, slow, certain. I nodded. No, I said. He left me a place worth fighting for. If this story meant something to you, don't just scroll away. Drop a simple 1 in the comments if you would have stayed and fought too, or type 0 if you would have walked away. I read every single comment, and I want to know where you stand. And if you believe loyalty like Coda's still exists in this world, hit that subscribe button and stay with us, because the next story might hit even closer to home. See you in the next one.